Yeah, so I think it's an exciting time to have a retail go-to market in today's time because we are
Hmm.
seeing the landscape change a
Hmm.
lot from what it was a few years ago, where a lot of manufacturers
Hmm.
were also trying to push vehicles to a certain few concentrated companies because, of course, it helped them with the sales and the uptick was pretty evident. But now we're seeing a lot more retail adoption, a lot more awareness within the consumers in terms of what works for them, what doesn't. We're seeing a lot more iterations and versions of assets coming out that are bringing less complaints,
Hmm.
less servicing requirements. So finally, we were able to
Hmm.
achieve what we want to do with that kind of awareness. With the borrower, still a long way to go, but good start. Good start to the year for sure.
Great, great. Now we'll hear more about it. Now that we have now on, like, I think now we are live, right? Yeah, YouTube live. So we are live now, and
Yeah.
Karan, not to make you nervous, but we are going live in your living room. So what's the vibe like right now there?
It's raining cats and dogs. It's been raining cats and dogs, which is
Yeah.
unlikely for Gurgaon or let's say Delhi. And, you know, well, the EVs have survived is what is important during this rain.
See, the better iterations of your
Nice.
vehicles are working. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, it
So that's a major positive. And
What
I
does that
agree
mean?
with
EV survived? What does that mean?
So there are
In the rain.
few, let's say, apprehensions when you buy an EV, right?
Mhm.
What will happen when it goes into a waterlogged area? One obviously is the charging, whether, range anxiety, etc. And second, what will happen if it'll go into a waterlogged area? Will the battery kind of short circuit or will, powertrain not work, function, etc. And they're all actually IP67 certified, so they're pretty much waterproof, their casings. So typically nothing much happens.
Hmm.
So all of them have been functioning. I was on the road Friday when it was raining heavily, so I
Yeah.
didn't see problems as such.
So you're driving EV finally?
You know, my EV was coming last month. Now it is coming this month. I'm hoping it'll come this week.
Last
Okay.
time we
You're
spoke,
very close now.
yeah.
Uh,
Last time we spoke, you were, talking, we were joking about it, right? That,
yeah.
you've been driving this Jeep, your favorite car, but finally you
So
made a
that's my
switch.
wife. That's my wife's favorite car.
Okay.
So
So EV on the horizon. Which one is it?
Um, honestly, I mean, it's either the IX1 or is what I want. Now, if he's able to get it for me quickly, then
Right.
it'll be cool.
that's a good talk.
Nehal is nodding. Approved by Nehal. Good car.
Yeah, I mean, with the budget and the relaxed registration charges, no, it works. It's quite economical to run that car
Mhm.
intercity for sure. It's a good choice.
It's got a long wheelbase as well, right? So
Yeah, yep.
it's very spacious.
I think and for Delhi travel or within NCR, you
Yeah.
need anything that can become a mini home to you. If you feel not good in your car, it's not a very pleasant travel. So
That's an interesting way to look at your cars. If you don't feel at home in your car, that can be a tagline for them,
anything
right?
to promote EV, anything to promote EVs.
Yeah,
Cheaper.
yeah. Make this a tagline. Make
I don't think we need to promote EVs anymore. I
That's
mean, where
true.
we stand
Not
today
in
at,
Delhi.
yeah,
Yeah,
at
yeah.
12% penetration,
Now
it's
I was
quite,
reading that this the segment of vehicles, passenger vehicles above 30 lakh rupees,
Mhm.
49% of registrations last calendar year was for EVs in that segment. Hybrid
Wow.
EVs or plug-in hybrids. We don't have that many plug-in hybrids, but for hybrids by Toyota and
Yeah,
other OEMs, and then of course the EVs, it's seeing, I mean, one in every four or five vehicles
yeah.
today in Delhi is an EV. So it's good to
Lovely.
see. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, pretty good stat for us to make any report. That's the first stat that you dropped, which is
Yeah.
interesting. Nehal, I also want to, fix the frame that right now for you, so that you are in the center and a little away, like we guys,
Oh,
because
sorry. This is
when
better?
we Yeah, little better. Later on the center. We have to do this all live stream, but that's okay. So looks good, looks good. So
Okay.
so that's a very interesting stat, and we can always with your tagline, make your car like feel like home, or the car make should make you feel like home. With that tagline, send it to your friend, man. We just promoted the car on the live stream. So is that number true? That number that you just gave, Nehal, like the EV penetration, and maybe give a range also if you have the number in front of you. Like, what's the range? What's the year you're talking about this data? Is it the latest one?
So yeah, this is for the 25-26 financial year data,
Hmm.
which mentions that about 49% to 50% of the registrations above the 30 lakh rupee passenger vehicle segment, which is of course slightly more premium than your regular Tata Nexons of the world. So more premium than that, but we're looking at more alternate energy coming in, which is EVs,
Mm.
hybrid, plug-in hybrids, all
Hmm.
kinds of models available. But seeing that number go up from, maybe 5-6% post COVID, 10% to up to 50%, I think it's quite encouraging.
Yeah.
And this is nationwide. This is not just in NCR. So
Yeah,
it,
the adoption is very real.
yeah, so it makes a lot of sense for at least the passenger vehicle
Like
segment, that
that
category.
leads us to those. And Karan was talking about range anxiety, and which was, I mean, when we were building with AMU, when we were building the deck, range anxiety was a very real thing. But now, I mean, I recently bought a car. I didn't buy an EV because of
Yeah.
range anxiety, but I did
Yeah.
notice that we travel about 700-800 kilometers back home, every couple of months, which is why I didn't want an EV because I thought I wouldn't be able to charge it or something. But I noticed down the road, every hour and a half, there is a charger. It's not, and I can find it on a map. In fact, I have a data point on Google that tells me there are 2 points that are empty. You can go now and charge. So
Yeah.
there is infra in place for charging, right? But
Well, I won't say
I was then
entirely, but
reading about
yes, it's getting built.
Yeah. It's subjective
It's
to
getting
certain
built.
rules,
it's getting better.
but it's
Yeah.
better.
Sama,
Better than before.
by the way, Sama is talking about Hyderabad Chennai route. So I think
Yeah.
if at all
South,
anywhere it
yeah,
will
okay.
come, it will definitely start with somewhere there, right?
Hmm.
That right. Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, Chennai. I know these routes have every hour, hour and a half. And I was surprised that you could map it on Google, and Google is giving me that point that tells me there are two chargers that are empty right now. Go get charged. I was like, oh, we should have got an EV. But then, I like, well, that range anxiety is still real, right? And I mean, and also post that, I was reading about how there is infra available, but infra is not available at the points of need, right? How do I say this? Like, it's not very. They've used the subsidy. They've just put it up wherever they have land, or they've not matched it to where you need and where you have. So there are gaps. There are a lot of gaps, but I think it's getting better. It's getting better and really usable.
But Sama,
Yeah.
that's how the country has grown, if you really look at it.
Yeah.
We've we've not been a planned nation in any case. Everything has been unplanned. I mean, we have like what, two or three cities that are planned overall. So
Yeah.
it's so
Everything is an
expecting that,
afterthought.
suddenly we get into planning mode and, have infrastructure built in that manner is not something that we should look at. But I feel that infrastructure will start coming up when the economics start making sense for the charging players or charge point
Right.
operators. Typically, charge point operators today are still operating at little less than 5% unless they are doing B2B, which is, serving businesses, etc., which is where everything is going to evolve. Once they cross a certain threshold of efficiency, or then automatically you will see that a lot of infrastructure will come up.
Yeah. I mean, on
So
top
what
of
is
that
the
thing,
most interesting area? Sorry, Nihal, yeah.
Sorry.
yeah, I was saying that I on top of that thing that for commercial vehicles, swapping makes a lot of sense, at least for light commercial vehicles, small commercial vehicles, two-wheelers, where it's manageable for a human to exchange the battery, the discharged and the charged battery between the station and the asset. But for larger commercial vehicles, trucks, buses, freight movement, or even passenger vehicles, to Karan's point, I think we will need that kind of infrastructure density even within the cities today. And a great starting point would be all the gas stations, fuel stations that you have, because people already have those routes mapped. So, some kind of like a JV or some kind of a strategic partnership with such stations on the road can really help pick that up. But I think that also goes against their ethos and cannibalizes sort of the fuel's actual core, right? So, I mean, there's a big discussion with the government stakeholders on this also, but I think we're yet to see that. The execution and implementation of these plans. There are large plans. Let me tell you that, like anytime we're sitting with Niti Aayog or Ministry of Heavy Industries, there are plans of about 5,000 crores, 10,000 crores to be put in infra. And in Gurgaon, Karan, I don't know if you can attest to this, but we see charging stations in private condominiums
Yeah.
where you would have like a static or like some charge zone or some other player coming in. But as soon as you go public, like someone you said, if I have to drive my EV to Jaipur or Jodhpur today from Delhi, I would also think twice and not know if the charging station
Right.
that I find on the way will have a spot available or not. Even though Google Maps shows those spots and it has mapped those places, but not every time you find a spot is operational or a charging point. Like I've seen charging points be on top of the footpath in Delhi. Karen, I don't know if you spotted those. So like
Yeah, I've seen this.
how does a four-wheeler go on a footpath and get itself charged? So there are loopholes there, but there's definitely improvement from when we started and when we met last 2 years ago.
So I
Chetan,
have
you're on
a
So what is the most interesting area? Infra is a very big thing, right?
no,
Where
infra
infra
is
is
a
going to
big
be the
play.
whole thing.
Sorry, go ahead, Sama. I'll complete after you.
So I know I was just asking, well, infra is the biggest play right now. I mean, looking at EV as a landscape itself, of course, what's happening around battery tech, what's happening around the vehicles itself, all that is happening, but infra seems to be that hiccup layer. And and one of the things that Nehal just said, well, working with gas stations, and given that you're talking about most of these swapping will work with light two-wheelers, would it make sense next to, you mean QCOM, basically? I mean, that's the biggest light two-wheeler commercial segment, right?
Yeah, I
So
mean,
what
I meant
about
like
having these
two-wheelers
swapping
and
stations
light
next to a
commercial vehicles. So where you have three-wheelers, four-wheelers, two-wheelers that if I mean used personally or for an e-com purpose or for any kind of revenue generating purpose. Depends, yeah. But I think swapping just makes your life easier because you don't have to wait in queues. You have a defined spot you can go to, like a fuel
uh,
station, and the routes are mapped. So if it's a commercial
or
vehicle
should
where
it
it
be
has to
right
go
next to the dark store? Would that make more sense than a gas station?
I mean, for a two or three wheeler, Sama, the distance covered is anyway very limited. You're not looking at 300, 400 kilometers or beyond that at all. I mean, these are distances between, like, if you talk of a quick com guy, he's driving between 20 to 25 kilometers within his radius or
Yeah, yeah,
periphery assigned to him to make the deliveries on time, right? He has
Yeah.
to be cognizant of the distance
yep,
traveled. So for that specific use case, it makes a lot of sense. Be it for three wheelers, be it for two wheelers, be it for four wheelers. These are all considered under
yeah,
light commercial vehicles that carry up to 1 ton, 1.5 ton. And over and above that, where batteries start getting heavier, where you can't potentially carry a
right.
50 kilo battery to swap it, of course, then you have to rely on the public infrastructure that the government and the public private partnerships can make. But swapping makes sense for the light commercial vehicles, which will have two, three, and four, all kinds.
I
Yeah,
have a
yeah, yeah,
slightly
yeah.
contrarian view. I agree with the three-wheeler that yes, where you can fit three batteries and you can swap them, the economics works. But the moment you come in a two-wheeler, the economics for a swapping player is really bad because you need at least 1.5 times the battery, as capex in order to maintain one swap because you have to keep when you pull one out, you have to keep another one inside.
The
So
buffer.
and for the charging time, and we still haven't yet solved fast charging entirely. And the other contrarian view is that when you look at larger vehicles, the 20 tonners or the large trailers, etc. Internationally, those are some of them, or let's say China at least, is looking at swapping in those. And that is robotic swapping for, large batteries.
Right.
Because the time to charge those batteries is almost 6 to 8 hours. And no truck is wanting to wait that long for charging it. Now, there are multiple issues around it. I think this industry is evolving drastically. But having said that, the real value is if you're able to swap those. And we've seen players who are able to, who are creating those infrastructure or that technology that can swap them with a skateboard style, kind of battery
Mm-hmm.
uh, structure. So Neo is one of them in China that has done this successfully. But having said that, we're far behind right now on that. But this is where the trend may go,
They're
and
headed.
and because the economics needs to work, we can't blow money on every swap and expect that the company will survive and make money from tertiary business models of that.
Yeah. I mean, I think first question that now comes into my head with all these different things coming together is like, do we need a VV thesis and for whom, right? Maybe Karan, you and Nehal, you can talk like, firstly, yes or no. If like from, and I think you may be talking from a founder's perspective, Nehal, and you may talk from the VC perspective, investor perspective. But do we need a EV thesis? And for you, who are the first, maybe top three stakeholders we need this for? So maybe Nehal, you first, and then Karan.
Yeah, no. See, Chetan, I think, of course, you need a thesis to invest in any industry, in any emerging industry like EV. But
Yeah.
I think it's a good problem to have today to still be in the phase of figuring it out
Hmm.
and not having concrete answers because it's so rapidly evolving that one thesis that you may build 2 years ago may not be valid today. And we've
Yeah.
seen that happen to certain companies in India that have not been able to perform despite massive investments because the market was not ready to take in or absorb that kind of capital deployed. So
Yeah.
sometimes I think it's a chicken egg story where you have to let the industry grow to a certain maturity or saturation. And
Yeah.
that will also happen with some investments flowing in, of course. But like today, we have manufacturers, we have financing companies, we have charging point operators, we have fleet guys, we have fintech companies that are
Hmm.
sourcing cases for banks and NBFCs, right? We have battery technology management companies. So there's a plethora of companies, but I think personally we're going to go through a massive round of consolidation. I
Hmm.
don't think half these companies are going to survive. I think maybe top five, top 10 are going to become large and they may end up acquiring or eliminating certain players out of the market. And I think that's a natural progression of any industry, not to say just for EV, but even for
Yeah.
AI, for example. I mean, not every company is going to do well and survive and give returns to their investors. So we have to be patient. We have to convince ourselves to invest more of our money in the business if we had it before the investor comes in. So I think we're going through that process of setting up the processes, people, profits, having the right plans in place, having the right view as a regulated entity because I'm not just a company, I'm a licensed company. So how to manage that tactfully with discipline, following the right principles of running an NBFC. So I think AMU's focus today is more on that and not having a thesis for investment. Today is somehow working well for us because it's giving us more time to actually focus on aspects that we may not have if we were chasing growth capital
Yeah.
or if we were in that frenzy that we had seen companies follow. So I think it's a blessing in disguise for players that are still emerging, that are still trying to set their mark in the in the industry. And when capital follows, when theses start firming up because companies like us start doing well,
Yeah.
in whichever relative form we do, it will start making sense to then have the right valuations where you're not blowing it up, where you're not exaggerating it. It's priced right. it can accommodate the deployment that we're talking about. If I'm talking of 1,000 crore AUM in the next 3 years, I can actually achieve it without taking shortcuts to get to that number to be able to generate returns,
Yeah.
or a faster route to an IPO, for example. So I think it gives us time away from that to actually focus on the processes to actually set up a solid foundation. And as more companies start doing it, I think it itself in its own build a thesis.
Hmm.
So that's thesis for
That's
me. I don't think there is anything extraordinary investors are looking at. And if I personally, as founder, have put in 100 rupees of capital in the business, am I willing to invest my next 100 rupees if I had to invest it? If I am not convinced myself and I'm relying on an investor to fund my business, I don't think that thesis will ever be strong enough for a person like Karan to invest in AMU. So I think it has to grow organically, and your vision as a promoter, your plan, your strategy, your numbers. I think that has to be the focus here. If you're developing a market, this is not a developed market. So
yeah.
so that's my opinion. I mean, I think it's a slow
Yeah.
and patient capital game, and we
Yeah.
only bring in more people when we're confident and we know what we're building is right and without
Yeah.
shortcuts. Yep.
VC, then we need patient capital. We need not just VCs, but family offices, other people to come into the vision. But problem statement ये थी कि EV thesis बनानी है कि नहीं, nail is slaying, रहने दो मत बनाओ. So it's like, what,
नहीं, मैं
what's
कह
the
रही हूँ कि
solution?
वो eventually it will
बनी
happen on
जाएगी.
its own.
Yeah, yeah,
हाँ,
correct,
you
correct,
will see the
correct.
ups and downs, and yeah.
Yeah, but I think sort of still a document is needed to even help them make a decision. Like you raise a very important point of consolidation, right? Like for example, that becomes a natural phenomena for any industry, not just EV. But for that also to see what kind of consolidation to happen, which ecosystem players will consolidate. I think just to narrow it down can give some sort of a primer to
Of course.
VCs, founders to build in that category. So I think even that if we achieve from this discussion, at least we have some document, but it's a good addition what you just mentioned, Nehal. Karan, your thoughts?
So, it's great that founders don't have theses because we bet on that, they can evolve as the market evolves. That's the right approach, potentially. But having said that, a VC does not have that luxury. We have to have a thesis. We
Mhm.
cannot operate without a thesis because we have to take a sneak peek in the future and kind of invest in what will the future be, right? For a particular sector or segment. And let's say for EVs, we today, I can't go out and invest in something that has already happened. I can't go out and invest in something that's already happening, or is already, adoption for that segment is taking place. I have to invest in something that may happen or potentially has the opportunity to capture a large market in the future, as along with disruption. So this without this, we cannot we cannot operate without a thesis. So we have to invariably create a thesis. Um, and our theses have to be in a manner where we drill through each and every segment and sub-segment, growth rates, expectations, and assess behaviors, um, and macroeconomics, all inclusive to kind of create a SOP for us to invest. Um,
तो फिर
and
सब
and that,
थीसिस थीसिस अभी अभी कहाँ है फिर like if you need a thesis to invest but growth
so
stage पे why there is no thesis, and I'm not saying you, I mean you and me have talked about it, I mean
no,
other
it's a
people in
great
the ecosystem.
question. It's a great
Yeah,
question, actually. Why? And actually, let me tweak that a little bit. Why VCs don't have an EV thesis,
yeah.
right? I think one reason is that VCs are very focused on enterprise growth or growth with on a digital format of growth. Now, when
Mm-hmm.
it comes to an EV, there's an asset involved. The moment there's an asset involved, it sits between the intersection of private equity and venture.
Yeah.
At the moment an investment thesis is going to sit between the intersection of private equity and venture, it is very difficult to get or create a thesis or find people who have both backgrounds. So, and hence, I mean, if you go to mostly if you go to VCs, they will today say that, oh, you're asset heavy, we will not want to, invest in an asset heavy play. They want digital growth. It has to be all over the web, kind of scenario. It's a very, um,
But sorry,
uh,
Karan, I have a question here to you.
sure.
Then, if if the thesis can't really be married to how fast the product is evolving, then how do you really call it a thesis? I mean, that's
No, I'm
then.
coming to that. So I'm coming to that. So we recently have come into the phase, in fact, of product development, right? Or let's say hard tech, where VCs are beginning to start backing product technology, IP-led technology in products. It was not a scenario, let's say, 5 years back. By the way, we started backing this industry at least 6 years back. There was no scenario where you would find investors wanting to back a product-led technology. And therefore, you will see that over time, this has evolved, and it's a learning curve. I have been fortunate to come from the private equity background and move to VC, and hence asset was not always a concern where I was, and I was happy to back product-led technologies. But this is where the evolution is. Now, also, if you look at it, most funds have one or two, or let's say EV investments. They don't have a whole bouquet of EV investments. It'll be clubbed into climate, it'll be clubbed into product tech, it'll be clubbed into, physical AI, whatever you may want to call it. But they will have one or two EV investments, and everything else, will be around that. Um, we realize that this is not how you can approach this ecosystem. It has to be a value chain based investing because the entire industry has to grow. It's absolutely new, nascent, right? The entire industry has to grow from scratch. And therefore, you have to invest in every piece of the value chain that allows this to grow.
No, so right now, money is being spent across the value chain, and there must be some thesis that it's being spent on, right? So, what is the current thesis? So, right now, if Karan invests, what do you look
So
at
we are I'll backtrack a bit also, right? So let me start with when we started investing, we invested in mostly the adoption phase of EV. We wanted to invest in companies that would help people adopt an
adopt?
electric, right? Increase the adoption. Now, obviously the use case being commercial applications, as Nehal had also mentioned, right? So the use case was commercial applications, which was all your, three-wheelers, two-wheelers, for gig riders, e-commerce, delivery ecosystem. And hence we invested in companies that uh, helped adopt each of these phases,
Mhm,
including an OEM,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
As a VC, coming into an OEM was a difficult call because it is capital intensive. You need capital to keep setting up the factory, etc. But yes, but without an OEM or without a vehicle, there is going to be no EV industry.
Yeah. So you invested
Uh,
from that scratch from that
yes,
way.
we invested from that focus area,
Mhm,
and I'm not naming any companies. Second stage where we are standing today, according to me, is where we are looking at deeper, let's say, product technology, or let's say integration of components, etc. That means each of the phases of the components that will help again the product or the EV flourish or make it into a better vehicle, and technology that helps assist each piece of that.
Hmm.
mhm,
The third phase is where, and that's going to be probably far later, is when we see widespread adoption of an EV, which is again let's say the consumer category or the retail category.
So when does that
And
phase
I'm not,
start? Like
and
which
I'm
year?
not talking about retail for commercial application. I'm talking about retail for, consumer.
Personal use.
Yes,
Hmm.
person.
So that I
Mhm.
have a question around your second stage because you said right now we are in the second stage, right? Where you're looking at
Yes.
technology or you're looking at what will make the vehicle
Sama, your
better.
video is off. ऐसे
Oh,
लगेगा आप
sorry,
पर्दे
sorry.
के पीछे से बोल रहे
Sorry,
हो.
sorry.
So so at least
Sorry,
get,
sorry.
yeah.
So Though you were talking about how this we are in the second stage, which where technology will make. You're focusing on companies that can make that you has technology that can make EVs better,
Yeah.
their lives longer, more efficient, things on those lines. So across the value chain, where do you think is the biggest white space? What is the most interesting thing that is left in the market where you should build products or companies? Where is the white
You
space?
know, this is live streaming. I'm not going to give you all the all the products that we're looking at. But having said that, yes. So all the components, right? Whether it's your powertrain, batteries, BMSs, motor controllers, every piece that will go into a vehicle is what will help, including charging infrastructures, points, etc. So there are a lot of pieces around it, but each and every phase would need investments in order for them to grow.
So, Nehal, for you, now hearing a more detailed thesis of Karan in this environment, what does that make you feel? I'm not talking about just AMU, but just, the partners you see, the founders you see in the EV ecosystem. Is that like the right structure and you see that that works for them, like from the founder perspective?
I think so because financing, be it AMU or any other company, is always going to be an enabler for distribution for such companies, and we can be part of the supply chain. We can be part of the retail distribution to consumers through financing. We can be part of vendor financing, but financing is a catalyst, is an enabler. So I think what Karan is saying makes a lot of sense because if there are no assets or innovation where innovation actually has to happen, if that does not get money for R&D, for development, for execution, implementation, indigenous manufacturing, we will not see that kind of uptake. So I think there has to be huge sums of money flowing top down in the supply chain, starting with the innovators, the creators, the manufacturers, the technology providers, followed by, of course, the ancillary, consequences of that product, which is financing, which is distribution, which is then fleet operators and the other kind of businesses that you go into as forward integration. So, of course, that makes a lot of sense. And for an emerging industry which is so tech heavy and so product heavy, it has to be done in that manner. I mean, unless without it, if you give too much money to the financiers, for example, and the product is not developed, which is what happened 3 or 4 years ago,
Yeah,
the market will never evolve. It has to be a marriage between what the demand and supply is like. So
yeah.
definitely, I
So
buy that point.
everybody
And
is
you can see
growing
this
together.
today.
Hmm.
Chetan, Neil, you can see this today. In fact, in the two-wheeler market, some of our companies are finding it difficult to get vehicles. We're
Hmm.
Yeah,
not able to, uh,
give
we're
them
not
enough.
able to, yeah, we're not able to supply them to meet the demand. I mean,
Yeah.
that is the issue.
Yeah.
Our
So,
adoption levels of two-wheelers, what, 10%? It would have been far more if we were able to manufacture, if we had vehicles that could manufacture at that pace. We're still dependent on external technology.
hmm. Which obviously then makes this problem even
Or
harder to solve.
or I think it gives an unfair advantage to your legacy companies that have always been doing this. So it's easier for them to move into a
EV.
newer sector because they have that kind of R&D, they have deeper pockets to go about it. Then you're not able to give that equal opportunity to a newer startup that is trying to create its own niche, be it in manufacturing or technology or like manufacturing powertrains, for example, or a complete vehicle. So how do you get that advantage if there's not enough capital support given to such companies who are trying to emerge now versus like the top 3 or 4 that have been running for the past 40, 50 years? So it has consequences. I mean, if the capital doesn't flow, then it becomes like the regular industry that we've been part of. But to see something exciting, to actually be able to innovate, you need that capital flow. Without it, it's just a grim situation
सर
where
डालो
everyone's just thinking,
सर डालो पैसा डालो यार, ऐसे कैसे मतलब
डाल
मैन्युफैक्चरर्स
तो रहे
"What the daddy?"
तो कितने करोड़ का फंड है थोड़ा बताओ
Or
कितना डाल रहे हो कितने करोड़ का फंड है ये बताओ
So it's a 400 crore fund.
अच्छा
oh,
दिस
nice.
इज व्हाट्स द नेम ऑफ द फंड
So Carrot Capital is the fund two, right? So first
या
one obviously was PPQ Ventures, which
हम्म
made the initial investment. The fund two is Carrot Capital. This is a 400 crore fund.
Okay.
Um,
Fair enough.
uh,
So that's like for putting into manufacturing, what is a meaningful sort of investment to make, like at least to lead the round, and at what stage do you invest?
so we're investing in the pre-Series A stage, which is uh, which is just after the seed stage and before the exponential growth stage.
Mm-hmm.
But and check size is about 8 crores to 15, 16 crores uh, per investment is what we're looking at. Mm,
So they hit
I think that
commercialization at that stage for a product company, hardware. Are you coming at a stage where commercialization has just started, or where is the chunk of the money going?
basically proof of concept is established. We're
Yeah,
not giving money for R&D
yeah,
is how I look at it.
yeah.
Um, I think that there are enough angel investors, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
seed investors in that to do that. And we can't manage that many companies, right? If we go
Mm-hmm.
very early, we have to invest in, maybe 50, 60 companies. And that cannot be how, how we have to look at two aspects, right? Return to our investors as well. So that's not how we
Mm-hmm.
think we can get returns.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think again, capital is a catalyst,
Yeah,
whether it's debt or it's equity, both are catalysts,
yeah.
uh, ultimately to kind of help these companies grow, uh,
Hmm.
fortify their ground, and capture the market.
That's a good amount, at least at that stage, right? So, like any example of a company that you invested in. Now it's out in public, nothing that you have to
So
hide right
evolution
now.
is taking place. So no,
Yeah,
so this amount it's evolved. I mean, the pre-series A stage investments used to be about up to $1 million overall, right? I mean, they used
yeah.
to be 500,000 K to about $1 million, which is, at that point, what let's
What?
say, 3.5 crores to about 7 crores, 8 crores
Yeah,
used to be the check size for a pre-series A. Today, pre-series A rounds are about $2.5 million.
yeah.
So the industry has also evolved. Things have gotten expensive.
So
Yeah.
maybe talk
Right.
about a category that you guys are behind right now. If not a
So
company, a
we
category at least that you guys are like,
no no. So we recently invested in a company called Milo Drive.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Milo Drive is building the infrastructure layer between Uber, Ola, or ride-hailing apps and your fleet operators. Um, so they are also assisting in putting a number of vehicles on the road. They manage the vehicles, and they have over 400 vehicles on the road. And suddenly, the four-wheeler ride-hailing industry has evolved drastically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? We've also invested in a company called PCAM, which is in the battery recycling space. So battery recycling is where you kind of take back the batteries, crush them, take out black mass, and from black mass
the
extract the
second life.
minerals and reuse it. Yeah, second life. I mean, we've already been through one cycle, so many
Oh.
years of let's say usage. So there are a lot of batteries that have been used and are in waste that can be recycled. Um, we think that recycling is, and there are not that many recycling players, but recycling is a very major component. Um, the reason
Mm.
recycling is important because we don't have lithium, or let's say cell manufacturing capabilities in India, and we don't have that much lithium mines. So
Yeah,
recycling, whatever we're getting today in the country, we should try and reutilize it to fortify this, segment and sustain the minerals.
yeah. Really value up the, like, this is like
Yeah.
way up the value chain. Like people are not thinking towards that direction, right? People are trying to still here in the middle. But if you don't have those batteries to even start with, those cells, I think and this is 2 years ago when I heard that there's still no factory in India who's producing cells. They still come from China. Is that still true, or now there are other players who are building those cells?
China and Korea. China and Korea.
So no, nothing in India yet.
Well, we haven't seen as yet.
We haven't seen it. So maybe
And I
somebody
don't think we'll
might be
have no
pitching.
till we have our own lithium. They'll no, unless we have our own lithium, it's not going to be possible for us to manufacture those cells.
No,
So
That's going to be
so
the
there
biggest.
have been a couple of companies, obviously, a lot of them have tried to manufacture, cells over here. But I'm, we haven't seen mass production of cell manufacturing in India.
Mhm. That's where maybe the one opportunity is, Nehal. Now, some names that Karan mentioned, these companies, are they your potential, firstly, partners in the ecosystem? Because last time I remember you were working with some major players in the EV ecosystem. Like as you become an ecosystem enabler, if these companies that he mentioned are partners and you want to talk to, at least take that out of this conversation with Karan offline.
And she's already made one note. I saw it.
अच्छा she made a note. Okay, nice. चलो good.
No, I have heard of both the companies. In
Yeah.
fact, we had even connected with one of the companies for the four-wheeler transportation that he's talking about. So I definitely think there's a space for a lot of companies like mine to service such borrowers for us. They're borrowers, right? Or lessees who would want vehicles and support for such vehicles through funding. But uh, how we have also transformed in the last 3, 4 years is to have found our niche. And I
Mhm.
don't think every financing is for every company or every
Yeah.
type of financing is for every company. So we've tried our hands with four-wheelers, passenger vehicles, two-wheelers, commercial vehicles, three-wheelers. And I think the sweet spot that most private financiers today, barring banks and small finance banks, is in the commercial vehicle space, where you can generate income and underwrite those receivables to understand your risk on the loan given. So as a smaller NBFC or as a smaller emerging financing company, cost of borrowing and lending matters a lot. So it stops being an EV specific financing at certain stage, because at that point you're looking at the most economical deal for you. It does not matter if it's coming from an EV financing player or not. So the categories change. I mean, for a three-wheeler, I would be of extreme relevance. But to a four-wheeler ride-hailing service, like Milo, he mentioned, would not make sense, because the IRR expectations for the borrower would be much lower, because they're well capitalized now. If they've gotten an investment, they may have debt running from like a larger scheduled bank. So why will a high charge or high interest rate arrangement make sense for them, right? So it's very category focused, category driven, the type of profile and credibility of the profile coming to us. And that's how banks or non banks in India are set to service. So I can't service everyone, and I'm not really suitable for everyone, and likewise for them. So there are certain categories like passenger vehicles, four-wheelers, where an EV specific financing is not really recommended today or needed today, because it works just like a regular ICE vehicle would. There are no real differences in the economics of the vehicle, because you have state level, center level subsidies, eligibility of the borrower. Like say if I'm going to an HDFC today to borrow an EV loan, EV vehicle, I mean electric vehicle loan, I won't be denied, or I won't be asked more questions than buying a regular ICE vehicle or a petrol diesel vehicle. It's the same process for me. There is no difference. It's on my eligibility and my credibility. Asset becomes key when it is a newer technology or a newer product. And if I, as an NBFC, is only focusing on that specific niche, and that makes sense to do only for a commercial vehicle or a revenue generating vehicle, specifically for two and three wheelers today. So it's a very evolving market, like Karan said, and it's not serviceable to everyone. My TAM is not everyone that is running an EV.
Yeah.
So I think that it will differ. It will continue being different for different customers and different requirements.
Yeah. And since you are are you an NBFC now, or or you've taken, last time I think we were talking about it, like taking the some
So
certification.
we've always been an NBFC.
Yeah, yeah,
We were engaging in more non-NBFC like funding, which is
yeah,
not seen typically for an NBFC, because again, it
yeah.
was an initial time. A lot of
Correct.
people were figuring out which model works for them, which
Yeah,
type of financing works for them. Should they get a lease? Should they get a loan? Do they want to be asset heavy? Like Karan said, that most investors shy away from doing an asset heavy business or
yeah,
investing in that. So there's a lot of consideration and factors, and it's very subjective to each business you're working with. There is no
Correct.
standard template to an NBFC should do these four things, or a
Yeah.
company should borrow from these four companies only. So it's a very open exchange today. I don't think those. That is why the question to theses, when you would ask the first question, I still haven't found, having talked to more than 150 plus investors now in the last 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
I have not found two investors talking about the same thing when it comes to
Yeah.
an EV. Everyone
Yeah.
has a different opinion and everyone has a different view. So
Yeah.
how can the marriage between, a borrower and a financier be that
Be
templatized?
be
It's very,
templatized. Correct.
yeah, it's very nascent today, to
So
say.
so आपको पैसा कौन देगा? Like VCs, if you've spoken to them, typically they have invested in NBFCs before, but their thesis of understanding how the NBFCs work, and that too in a new category like EV, I mean,
Yeah.
it's also difficult
No,
for them also.
it's really dry, Chetan. There's
Yeah.
no, there's massive crunch, and I think that comes more from a regulatory standpoint than a thesis standpoint in India,
Yeah.
because we were considered historically as shadow banks, and there's like a whole lot of history on why NBFCs are NBFCs today. So I would give 70% of the problem to us being a regulated entity, and
Yeah.
30% of the problem attributing to investors having maybe lack of theses today.
Correct.
But I think, barring the regulation point, thesis is maybe only 12 or 15 months away. I mean, personally, when I'm now talking to investors, as soon as you're able to uh, prove a proof of concept, you've started generating revenue, you're on path to profitability. I think it is an attractive proposal to any
Yeah.
investor, at least to look
Yeah.
at. And historically in India, most NBFCs have seen funding from very specialized kind of VCs or PEs. It's not everyone's cup of tea. A lot
Yeah.
of investors may cater to fintech companies, but for
Yeah.
regulated NBFCs, you have very specific kind of investors that invest in the Indian domestic NBFC market. And to attract that kind of capital, that kind of scale, you need scale. You need that supply. One of course, the customers and the demand on the ground, and then again married with the supply in the back. So until you have that demand, um, it's kind of like I said, blessing in disguise till that thesis is being firmed up. Companies still find their way out because a lot of consolidations that I see happen today are happening in the form of strategic alliances where there's an OEM, for example, buying out an NBFC and saying that you cater to my book indefinitely, or you become a captive financier to me, or you work with my entire vendor supply chain. Give trade advances, give inventory financing, give supply chain credit, give bill discounting, also give borrowers retail financing. So there's a lot of play that I'm seeing in strategic partnerships with ecosystem players. Now that can be a fintech, that can be a battery OEM, that can be a swapping company, that can be a vehicle OEM. So
Yeah.
I think those kind of strategic partnerships and alliances is where we think the next phase of capital will start flowing into, specifically for NBFCs and financing companies. And eventually, once we reach that scale of, reaching an AUM of 1,000, 2,000, up to 5,000 crores, I'm 100% sure that the larger guys will start wanting a chunk in that too. So I think we're a few months, maybe a couple of years away from that, but not too far.
Okay, that's the pitch we'll send to all investors now.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm banking on, man. I hope I'm right.
Like ये इतना relaxed pitch होती है ना, like for example, even though I mean we are in the business of doing pitch decks, and but somehow I mean our KPI is only this, like whatever this relaxed conversation is, if you can put it in the deck, because वो नहीं हो पाती
Yeah,
for whatever reason. And then when you have the time and mind space with an investor, at least वो डाले ना डाले, but for the right reasons, that person should
yeah,
know, right? And that person should be also enlightened with some new insights. यार ये तो मुझे पता नहीं था. तो
correct.
आई डोंट नो इफ करण फील्स की कुछ नया आपको आज समझ आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा.
This is something
So
he's
no,
heard
obviously,
100 times.
there's always something to learn.
This is all. So from her standpoint, NBFC standpoint, anybody building around financing, in the EV space, what is the thesis for them from the VC standpoint? क्या होना
No,
चाहिए?
no,
Like this.
absolutely. It's one of the most important segments that caters to adoption. We
Yeah.
did invest in a company, Alt Mobility, in this space. Obviously, they didn't move. They were also looking at moving towards becoming an NBFC, but they didn't move towards that. But yes, I think a very key aspect over here, the moment you get into financing, is to understand the asset, um, which is what, let's say, the traditional NBFCs or banks are unable to do, and which is why there's a role to play for players like AMU and Alt, etc. Understanding the asset is a key component of this, because if you don't understand the asset, you're not able to maintain it, predict how the uptime is going to be of that asset. The your What are you really underwriting? N-
Yeah.
So that's where there is a large role to play, and it's data driven. There's a long learning curve that the traditional players have to kind of adapt to. So the difference with them is, obviously, they were a finance company, and the today leasing companies are data companies.
Yeah. नहीं बट बट आप ये बताओ ना जिसकी कोई थीसिस ही नहीं है इन देयर फॉर देयर फ्रॉम देयर पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू I mean how will they even perform initially in a new industry? Nobody knows, right? Like no matter how good an understanding of the asset you have, if you're lending it out in AMU's case, some of it, the initial returns are risk itself for them also, right? So like you are in a way, when you're putting a money in AMU, you need to give them some time as well to also make those initial mistakes, right, in a way.
So I think, and Nehal can, verify what I'm saying. Um, I think typically when companies like AMU, come into being, they start to try and understand the asset and which asset will they underwrite. So they have a say in, the operator who's going to purchase an asset. Now, if let's say I want to buy a Tata EV, if and again Nehal's example, that I will go to the bank and say I want to buy a Tata EV. They're banking on my credit worthiness to give me the loan and buy that vehicle. Over here, we're banking on how the asset will perform, what its receivables can be, if the asset performance will meet up to its expectations or not. And if the asset shuts down before its, performance or expected performance, then it's going to be a loss to both parties. So therefore, the asset is important, and hence, I'd let Neil verify this. They have a say in what asset they want to kind of underwrite, uh, and they can push the players towards that same asset.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Chetan, there's a development cost to entering anything new. So if the first 1,000 loans that we did now out of like the 45,000 loans we've done, we would have taken a higher loss on selling the asset than we did today or than we do today. And we've learned from that cycle. So I think it has to be patient capital, but financiers definitely do get a lot of say in which asset they understand the best, and hence which asset do they want to promote more than the other. Right. So, but I slightly differ on the point that it has to be led entirely by technology, because I think in India, if something works commercially, it works, be it backed by technology or not. And the kind of segment that we work with, which is about the same for almost everyone in the space of financing today, at least in the retail side, is that you work with new to credit borrowers. And when you work with tier 2, tier 3 cities like Jaipur, Ahmedabad, you're looking at Allahabad, Lucknow, Kanpur, smaller cities where the real adoption comes from these cities. You can't really be saying that if the asset does not give me enough data points, it is not a good asset to finance. I think that claim today can't be a true claim, because we have realized that if you're collecting well, if your mechanisms in the company, like I was talking about people and processes, if your processes are set well enough, to collect for an asset, be it a machine loan, a car loan, an EV loan, a non-EV loan, it will happen. And I can still give you those returns and metrics for you to find my company attractive to invest in without having that kind of product technology, maybe. So I think that's also an evolving factor, but I don't think it's the factor that you can base the entire industry on, because a lot of this comes from support of manufacturers, the servicing support, the aftermarket sales support, the annual maintenance contracts they are offering their buyers today, or their distributors, dealers they're appointing. I think it's a whole ecosystem. And tech is just a piece of it. But for me as a financier, I don't personally look at what kind of data points I can fetch off this vehicle is why I would do it. I would still look at the overall assessment of the borrower, the vehicle, what are the receivables like, पैसे कैसे कमा रहा है, कहाँ चला के कमा रहा है, कितने घंटे चलाते हो दिन में, like, those are basic metrics which you can of course back by AI, machine learning, eventually utilize that data and monetize that data better. But I don't think I can only do it basis the data points I get from the product. So there's a slightly
Very
disagreement there. But I think like I would try
I,
to run it as
I
a business.
I understand what Nehal is saying, and but having said that, see, backing or let's say underwriting something is all about risk mitigation. And
Right.
how do you come up on top is how do you mitigate certain risks of, uh, I would say if you're not getting receivables, if the business, that you're or the business or the person you're backing does not have the correct creditworthiness, etc., then there's no value. I mean, that's step one. I think today we're beyond step one. We're sitting at a point where we want to maximize the utilization. And when we want to maximize utilization, we look at risk mitigation aspects. And therefore, I would look at data points, or let's say the company that we'd back, we would want them to look at data points that allow them to back, underwrite assets that have higher value, higher utilization rates, because it will give them more revenue. It will, build the company in a better manner. So obviously there is a phase. We've seen that first phase where you will do multiple assets, and then obviously you will try and zero down on certain assets that you have the capability of. Battery being a key aspect to it, and you need data points of charging, discharging cycles to understand how the person is performing with the vehicle. I mean, we've seen scenarios where uh, you know a vehicle is leased, uh, and they didn't utilize it for number of months. The battery was deep discharged. Now 50% of that vehicle value is written off, though he was paying the let's say your EMI. I mean, he was paying it through whatever business means he had. But when it really came back to saying, he said, okay, fine, I've been paying my EMI, now take this vehicle back, give it to somebody else. The moment you go, you say, oh, these vehicles are deep discharged because he didn't utilize them. Now, if you're not getting data points on a regular basis, and that they're not charging it or charging those vehicles, vehicle is deep discharge, you're losing out on that asset, or you will lose out on that asset in future. So it's about risk mitigation. So the person, or let's say the company that has better risk mitigation capabilities and utilization capabilities thereof will have more success.
सारे सर बहुत सारे डेटा पॉइंट्स हैं अभी नेहल के पास. नेहल इज लाइक already on top of that. So which opens up another conversation around data analytics in the ecosystem. So आज का conversation was just a starter. I feel that we will need a lot more discussions like these again with you also, but also with multiple
चीज
people.
तो आपने भी नहीं बताई, तो चेतन आप बता दो. That was the topic.
ईवी की थीसिस तो नहीं है तभी बना रहे हैं, बट इन जनरल फ्रॉम अ पर्सन who's seeing it by talking to founders, and also someone who's just started riding hybrid. मैं तो ईवी पे भी पहुंचा भी नहीं हूँ. तो what I've seen is that there's a lot of mix of money needed. It can't be just VC, it can't be just family office, and it should be ideally government also. I think should subsidize money so that eventually the money comes to other people. I feel we are all learning, and eventually it has to be make an impact. So EV तो आना ही है, but I think nobody's telling what is the pathway to it, right? Like 0 to 1 हो गया, but 1 to 10 ही अभी मुझे लगता है कि clarity नहीं है. So I feel that we should all focus in the next 5-7 years on 1 to 10 and then worry about the rest. So मेरी thesis अगर होगी तो long term ही होगी. It's not a short term. I mean, for me, it can't be like a 5 years. I feel it should be a 10 years thing, and also multiple rounds participation, as Neil you said. Not just I'll participate one time and not participate, and I have to keep backing those founders to take them through that journey. So
Yep.
अभी high level तो यही है, बाकी तो granular में अभी धीरे धीरे as we talk to more people we'll reach there. But thanks for starting
Yeah.
this today. But your thoughts first on, as we wrap on, like, can it be done through these conversations? Like, is it something that can be done and should be done? Nail now, yes and no.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I think I heard this, I'm copying this from somewhere, but it's called breaking the ice, right? Quite literally breaking the ice with these conversations and obviously moving on to more alternate energy channels. So we should keep having these discussions. And I think we're a long way ahead. But I am positive EVs will follow solar, and by 2035 to 2040 is what most reports predict. We
Yeah,
should have a second alternate to the current coal-based energy that we have in India. So I think I'm quite convinced, and I'm super pumped to work with this for the next 10 years of my life.
amazing. Karan,
That's great to hear because we learn actually the maximum from the founders because they have their ear to the ground. And this obviously will help us keep evolving how we look at things. Um, and therefore very helpful, and definitely we should continue this. Um, the only
but
thing is, Chetan,
uh,
what thesis you come out with, we have no control
Yeah,
over.
that
that
is not
that
guaranteed.
that's the suspense for the end, right? Live stream में कुछ suspense भी तो चाहिए ना. Like हो क्या रहा है फिर end में हुआ क्या? Then it will be on me and Sama and everybody to consolidate that. But हमें आप मसाला दो, बना हम देंगे. तब वही करते हैं ना डेक में भी. Like we need the मसाला from people, right? From founders. उसको कैसे दिखाना है, कैसे एक्साइटिंग बनाना है to the reader, that's our job. तो वो काम हमारा है, आप हमें मसाला देते चलो बस.
Done.
ठीक है
Done.
ना?
Absolutely.
So,
Yep.
do nominate one more founder or a VC, so to add to the conversation, so that we bring in more people every week. हर हफ्ते में
Yep.
एक बारी तो कर ही सकते हैं. तभी आई थिंक आफ्टर 7-8 weeks कुछ होगा. अर्पित ने भी, मैंने अभी अर्पित को आई मैसेज्ड हिम फ्रॉम ब्लूम. मैं कहा, you guys did a EV thesis back like 2-3 years ago. You should
Yeah.
definitely have a say in this. तो he said yes, let's do it September some week. तो आप करना एक नॉमिनेट, एक एक कोई. और बिफोर वी रैप अप, it's a ritual that I do pray to the universe for spiritual reasons. Spiritual है, but I like doing that since we all here. And just a short prayer before we end, to the universe that made this happen. All of us talking about something meaningful for all of us in our lives, and also hopefully this inspires other founders and VCs, to make the right decision and again achieve meaning in their life, whatever that is. And for both, Nehal and Karan, whatever you aspire for in the next 3 to 6 months, hope the universe makes it happen and you manifest your way to that thing. And yeah, world peace also prevails. That's what we need. Amen.
Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. Take care.